Back to the 80s, 15 legends who made pop eternal. Have you ever wondered, why can a single lyric take you back to your youth? Why can an old melody make your heart race like the first time you fell in love? That's no coincidence. The 1980s hides something, a kind of magic that only legendary voices could touch. They didn't just stand on stage. They stepped into your mind, slipped into your dreams, and stayed there forever. Today, we open the door back to that world where music was destiny, and behind every spotlight stood an immortal soul. 15 names, 15 icons, and a decade that never gets old. Are you ready? Michael Jackson, the king of pop. The 80s are inseparable from the name Michael Jackson. He wasn't just a singer. He was a global cultural phenomenon. With a moonwalk that could touch the coldest of hearts, a sparkling glove, a red leather jacket, and especially the album Thriller, the best-selling musical masterpiece of all time. Michael Jackson redefined the entire entertainment industry. Hits like Billie Jean, Beat It, and Smooth Criminal didn't just echo on the radio. They were accompanied by pioneering cinematic music videos that forced MTV to change just to keep up with him. No one could perform like Michael. Every time he stepped on stage, the audience witnessed a miracle. He shaped fashion, dance, and stagecraft, and he was the one who transformed pop into something that transcended music. It became a lifestyle, a dream. Madonna, the queen of pop. If Michael was the king, then Madonna was the undisputed queen. Bold, sharp, and always knowing how to command attention. Madonna tore down every old stereotype about what a female artist should be, with hits like a Virgin, Material Girl, Holiday, and Into the Groove. She didn't just conquer the charts, she conquered the minds and wardrobes of an entire generation. Her fashion style, lace stockings, bras worn over shirts, arms full of bracelets, a bleached blonde mullet, became a symbol of rebellion. But more importantly, Madonna dared to talk about sex, women's rights, religion, and personal freedom in an era when those topics were still considered taboo. She wasn't just a singer, she was a trailblazer who shaped a generation of women to dare to be true to themselves. Prince was like no one else, and perhaps no one would dare to be like him. A complete musical genius, Prince wrote, produced, played multiple instruments, and performed with a captivating madness. With his androgynous look, a long purple coat, and a flower-shaped guitar, he seemed to have stepped out of another dimension. Purple Rain, 1999. When Doves Cry, Kiss. Each song was a world of its own. Prince blended pop, funk, rock, and R&B, turning it all into his own language. He didn't cater to the market. The market was forced to revolve around him. His defiant personality, distinct music, and free-thinking ideology made Prince not just an artist, but a symbol of cultural rebellion. Whitney Houston. When Whitney Houston sang, the world held its breath. Her voice, wide, powerful, yet tender and full of emotion, made people believe in magic. Not everyone can maintain flawless technical skill while conveying genuine emotion, but Whitney did it effortlessly. From How Will I Know and Saving All My Love for You to I Wanna Dance with Somebody, Whitney Houston painted an enchanting 80s with soul, pop, and power ballads. She was a symbol of elegance, talent, and emotion, a true diva. And it was she who paved the way for a generation of female vocalists like Mariah Carey and Beyoncé to follow the path to greatness that she had laid. Cyndi Lauper. In an era when everything seemed to be molded, Cyndi Lauper burst onto the scene like a whirlwind of color. with her orange-red hair, eccentric outfits, and an untamable spirit. Cyndi brought an unprecedented freshness. Girls Just Want to Have Fun wasn't just a catchy pop song, it was a declaration of life, a song of freedom, the echoing laughter of girls who just wanted to live life to the fullest. But Cyndi was more than just rebellious. Ballads like Time After Time and True Colors proved that she was also an emotional musical storyteller. Cyndi Lauper was the embodiment of creative freedom, of daring to be different and to love life on her own terms. Drop the name of the song that holds your strongest 80s memory, Lionel Richie. While other artists chased the upbeat synth-pop trend, Lionel Richie chose his own path, a gentle, sophisticated, and emotional road. With his warm baritone voice, kind face, and soulful ballads like Hello, All Night Long, and Say You, Say Me, Richie was a soothing balm for the soul in a turbulent decade. His music wasn't loud, it seeped gently into the listener's heart. Richie was also a rare artist who could conquer the charts while winning the hearts of both critics and the general public. In an era where everything was a race, he chose to stay, and the audience stayed with him. Janet Jackson. As Michael Jackson's younger sister, Janet was once seen as living in his shadow, but she quickly stepped into her own light with her talent and strength. With the album Control, Janet asserted a powerful and commanding musical identity. Rhythm Nation 1814 went even further, a record that was not only catchy, but also carried a deep social message. Janet brought R&B, pop, and new jack swing to the mainstream while retaining her unique personal style. Her choreography, precise, powerful, and sharp, became an inspiration for a generation of artists like Britney Spears and Beyoncé. Janet is living proof that you don't have to be anyone's shadow, you just have to be yourself. Billie Joel, without the need for dazzling lights or spectacular stage shows. Billie Joel quietly captured the hearts of listeners with his most sincere and relatable music. He wasn't just the piano man, he was a storyteller in sound, the inner voice of everyday America. With Uptown Girl, he depicted a love that crossed social classes through joyful melodies that felt straight out of a musical. Meanwhile, Tell Her About It offered loving advice like that of a lifelong friend. Each of Billie Joel's songs is a slice of American life, sometimes optimistic, sometimes filled with regret, but always authentic to its core. In the MTV era, where image reigned supreme, he chose to sit quietly behind his piano, telling stories that everyone could recognize from their own lives. That is precisely why he wasn't just successful, he became timeless. Bruce Springsteen, the boss. That name alone says it all. Bruce Springsteen wasn't a glittering Hollywood star, he was the champion of the working class, the voice of a fading American dream that still burned with a quiet fire. Within the USA, he didn't simply sing about patriotism, but about the disappointment, the sacrifice, and the wounds left by war. It was an anthem for those who felt forgotten, yet still held their heads high with pride. Dancing in the Dark, I'm on Fire, or Glory Days weren't just songs. They were vivid stories about ordinary people, the unrequited lover, the lonely soul in the night, or the man reminiscing about his youth. Springsteen didn't sing about glamour. He sang about us. It was this raw honesty, combined with the resilient spirit of the American working class, that turned him into an irreplaceable icon. Bruce Springsteen wasn't the star of a decade, he was the soul of a generation. Tina Turner. Few can return to the top after fading away, but Tina Turner could. And she did it in a way no one will ever forget. After years of hardship and being forgotten, Tina returned in the 80s with What's Love Got to Do With It, a hit that resurrected her entire career. With her signature raspy voice, explosive dance moves, and volcanic energy, Tina Turner didn't just come back, she was stronger than ever. She became a symbol of rebirth, of a woman who could rise from the ashes and shine brighter than ever before. If you had to choose just one voice to represent the 80s, who would it be? George Michael Wham! And solo, with his handsome looks, sweet voice, and a style that blended charm with rebellion. George Michael quickly became a pop icon of the 80s, starting with the group Wham! And explosive hits like Wake Me Up Before You Go Go and Last Christmas. George brought a British flair to the vibrant American market, but it was his solo career that truly established his stature. The album Faith was a cultural explosion, not just for its quality music, but for its bold and individualistic image. Careless Whisper, with its haunting saxophone, became an iconic breakup anthem. George Michael wasn't just a star, he was a representative of a generation that dared to love and live truthfully. Huey Lewis and the News. While many artists chased modern synth pop trends, Huey Lewis and the News chose a different path, a blend of traditional rock and quintessentially American pop. The band brought a familiar, down-to-earth feeling, like a backyard barbecue, with songs that were easy to listen to and easy to remember. The Power of Love was not just a chart-topping hit. It was also tied to the movie Back to the Future, making the name Huey Lewis immortal in pop culture. With Hip to Be Square and If This Is It, the group proved that music doesn't need to be overly complex to create emotion. They were a band of ordinary people, but they created a sound that made all of America move. Paula Abdul before becoming a star on stage. Paula Abdul was already a talented choreographer behind the iconic dance moves for Janet Jackson. But with Straight Up, Forever Your Girl, and Opposites Attract, she didn't just step into the spotlight, she owned it with a fiery performance style, powerful choreography, and a captivating voice. Paula turned every performance into a visual feast. She was the embodiment of a modern wave of female empowerment, not just beautiful and talented, but also in control of her own art. In the era dominated by MTV, Paula Abdul was the queen of every frame. Rick Springfield, the pop-rock heartthrob, part rocker, part soap star, Rick Springfield was the total 80s package. With rugged charm and a guitar slung over his shoulder, he stepped into the spotlight with Jesse's Girl, a song that became an instant anthem of longing and betrayal. But Rick wasn't just a one-hit wonder. Hits like Don't Talk to Strangers and Love Somebody proved he had staying power. His blend of rock grit and pop gloss hit the sweet spot between rebellious and romantic. Whether he was melting hearts on General Hospital or blasting through a concert setlist, Springfield captured the restless, yearning spirit of the decade. Debbie Gibson. While other girls her age were writing in their diaries, Debbie Gibson was writing hits that shook America. As a teenager, she wasn't just a singer, she was also a songwriter, producer, and a symbol of artistic autonomy in music. Only in My Dreams, Lost in Your Eyes, and Foolish Beat made her one of the youngest artists ever to reach the #1 spot on the Billboard charts. Debbie was the ideal role model for the youth of the 80s, independent, creative, and unafraid of challenges. She was living proof that the American dream, at any age, can come true if you dare to pursue it. They made us dance. They made us cry. They gave us songs that still echo through every radio, mixtape, and memory. The 1980s were more than neon lights and cassette tapes. They were the soundtrack of growing up, of dreaming bigger, of feeling everything. And thanks to these legendary voices, the music never really ended. It just keeps playing in our hearts. Which artist defined your 80s? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more trips down memory lane. Thanks for watching. Top 15 American wrestling legends of the 1970s, 1980s, who turned your living room into Madison Square Garden on a Saturday night. Hogan rips his shirt like a superhero. Savage flying like a madman. Piper talking trash with fire in his eyes. The 70s and 80s weren't just the birth of WWE, they were a full-blown revolution. Let's step back between those golden ropes, feel the roar of the crowd, and relive 15 wrestling legends who defined an era. And hey, maybe your personal hero made the list. Hulk Hogan. If you were around during the golden era of professional wrestling in the 1980s, chances are you remember the unmistakable presence of Hulk Hogan. With his handlebar mustache, yellow bandana, and 24-inch pythons, Hogan wasn't just a wrestler, he was a phenomenon. Born Terry Bollea in 1953, Hulk Hogan first emerged on the wrestling scene in the late 1970s. But it was during the early 80s that he truly changed everything. With his larger-than-life presence and all-American image, he became the face of the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, during its explosive rise into mainstream culture. Hogan didn't just become a superstar, he helped launch the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, into the global spotlight. Millions tuned in to hear him shout, "What you gonna do when Hulkamania runs wild on you?" And we believed every word. Hogan embodied more than just muscle and bravado. He stood for strength, optimism, and the classic battle of good versus evil. His legendary body slam of Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3 in 1987 wasn't just a moment in sports. It was a cultural milestone for children and parents alike. Hogan was a larger-than-life hero who encouraged us to say our prayers, take our vitamins, and never give up. Beyond the ring, he was on lunchboxes, posters, and in the dreams of kids everywhere. On July 24th, 2025, we sadly said goodbye to this American icon. Hulk Hogan passed away at age 71, leaving behind not just a wrestling legacy, but a generation's worth of memories. For many, it marked the end of an era. While his later years came with ups and downs, his impact on popular culture and in the hearts of fans remains untouchable. The Iron Sheik, back when wrestling was raw, theatrical, and broadcast on weekend afternoons. One name stood out as a villain everyone loved to hate: the Iron Sheik. Born Hossein Khosrow, Ali Vaziri in 1942, he brought real physical power to the ring and served as a coach for the U.S. Olympic wrestling team. In 1983, the Iron Sheik shocked fans by defeating Bob Backlund to win the WWF Championship. Just weeks later, he became the launching pad for Hulk Hogan's meteoric rise. Although Hogan beat him for the title in early 1984, that match ignited Hulk fever and forever cemented Sheik as one of Hogan's most iconic early opponents. With his signature bowed boots, mustache, and commanding camel clutch, the Iron Sheik drew huge crowds and even bigger boos. But over time, fans grew to love him for his charisma, humor, and passion. He passed away in June 2023 at the age of 81, leaving behind a legacy of intensity, controversy, and unforgettable moments. Bob Backlund. Before the bright lights of WrestleMania and the larger-than-life personas of the late 80s. Bob Backlund was the face of professional wrestling. With his clean-cut image, technical skill, and unmatched conditioning, he served as WWF champion from 1978 to 1983, an incredible reign in any era. Backlund wasn't flashy. He didn't shout or wear outrageous costumes. He wrestled, and he did it with intensity, focus, and respect for the sport. Fans admired him for his integrity, humility, and relentless energy. In the ring, he was a machine, outlasting challengers with sheer stamina and skill. Even after losing the title to the Iron Sheik in late 1983, a loss that paved the way for Hulk Hogan's rise. Backlund returned in the 90s with a surprising heel turn that introduced a new, eccentric side to his character. Bob Backlund remains a unique figure in wrestling history, a throwback to a time when hard work and honor defined a champion. Andre the Giant Long, before wrestling became mainstream entertainment. There was one man who could silence a crowd with just his presence, Andre the Giant. Standing at an astonishing 7 feet 4 inches, 2.24 meters, and weighing over 520 pounds, around 236 kilograms. Andre wasn't just a wrestler, he was a living legend. Born André René Roussimoff in France in 1946, he suffered from acromegaly, a condition that caused his body to grow at an extraordinary rate. But instead of hiding from the spotlight, Andre embraced it. By the 1970s and 80s, he had become a global icon in professional wrestling, appearing in rings around the world and eventually becoming a beloved fixture in the WWF, though his size made him nearly unbeatable. Andre often wrestled with grace and surprising agility for a man of his build. Andre passed away in 1993, but for those of us who watched him live, he remains larger than life, not just in stature, but in memory. Macho Man Randy Savage. If you watched wrestling in the 80s, you couldn't miss Macho Man Randy Savage, a superstar who was as intense as he was unforgettable. With his raspy voice, colorful robes, oversized sunglasses, and wild energy, Savage wasn't just a performer, he was a spectacle. Born Randy Poffo in 1952, he was a second-generation wrestler who carved out his own path with unmatched charisma and in-ring storytelling. His signature catchphrase, "Ooh yeah," became part of pop culture, and his flying elbow drop from the top rope thrilled audiences across the country. One of his greatest moments came at WrestleMania 3, where he battled Ricky the Dragon Steamboat in what many still call one of the best matches of all time. Randy Savage passed away in 2011 at the age of 58, but his legacy remains untouchable. For many of us who grew up in the golden era, the Macho Man wasn't just a wrestler, he was the madness, the magic, and the moment. Who's the wrestling legend that lives forever in your heart? Drop a comment and let's remember the golden days together. Dusty Rhodes. If Hulk Hogan was the superhero, then Dusty Rhodes was the heart. The American dream connected with fans not because he was perfect, but because he was real. With his southern drawl, polka dot gear, and heartfelt promos, Dusty spoke to the common man. He wasn't built like a Greek god, but his words could move crowds. His legendary Hard Times promo in 1985 captured the spirit of working-class America, whether battling Ric Flair or rallying underdogs in the NWA. Dusty always fought for dignity, pride, and the little guy, he held multiple world championships, but more than titles, he gave fans something to believe in. Dusty passed in 2015, but his influence lives on through his sons and every wrestler who dares to dream. Harley Race. Harley Race was everything wrestling used to be: tough, gritty, and no nonsense. Born in 1943, Race became one of the most respected NWA World Heavyweight Champions of all time, holding the title 8 times. He wasn't flashy. He didn't need gimmicks. Harley Race let his in-ring talent and legitimate toughness do the talking. His battles with Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, and Terry Funk weren't just matches. They were fights that felt real. Known as the King of Wrestling before the nickname was handed out like candy, Race commanded respect wherever he went. Even Vince McMahon called him the toughest man I've ever met in this business. Harley passed away in 2019 at the age of 76. For old-school fans, he remains a symbol of wrestling's raw, unscripted era when men bled, sweated, and earned every cheer. Rowdy Roddy Piper. If you were a wrestling fan in the 1980s, Rowdy Roddy Piper was impossible to ignore. Wild, unpredictable, and always one step ahead on the microphone. Piper was the kind of heel fans loved to hate. With his trademark kilt and bagpipe entrance, he brought a rebellious, chaotic energy to the WWF that changed wrestling forever. Piper wasn't about brute strength. He was about mind games, sharp wit, and pushing the boundaries. His interview segment, Piper's Pit, became legendary, and his feuds with Hulk Hogan, Jimmy Snuka, and Mr. T helped launch the first WrestleMania. Though he played the villain, many fans saw through the act and admired him for his intelligence, fearlessness, and raw charisma. He passed away in 2015 at the age of 61, and to this day, wrestling fans still echo his famous line, just when they think they got the answers. I change the questions. Jimmy Superfly Snuka. Back in the early 80s, before high-flying became common, Jimmy Superfly Snuka soared like no one else. With his wild hair, barefoot presence, and island swagger, Snuka brought a whole new style to the WWF. But it was his leap off the top of a steel cage at Madison Square Garden in 1983 that made him a legend. That moment, arms stretched wide, crashing down like a comet, left fans speechless and inspired a generation of future wrestlers, from Mick Foley to The Rock. Snuka didn't just wrestle, he flew. At a time when most stayed grounded, he became a fan favorite, not just for his athleticism, but for his intense presence and connection with the crowd. Though his later years were shadowed by controversy, his impact on wrestling's evolution is undeniable. Jimmy Snuka passed away in 2017 at the age of 73. But for many of us, that image of him standing barefoot on the top rope moments before taking flight is forever etched in memory. Hit that 1 in the comments if Jimmy Superfly Snuka was one of your favorites. Sergeant Slaughter. In the world of wrestling, few characters blended real-life patriotism with storytelling like Sergeant Slaughter. With his drill sergeant hat, dark sunglasses, and booming voice, he marched into the ring like he'd just stepped out of boot camp. Originally introduced in the early 80s as a tough-as-nails American hero, Slaughter became a symbol of national pride. His matches were more than entertainment. They felt like battles for the soul of America. Kids looked up to him like a G.I. Joe was brought to life, and sure enough, he even became one. In a bold and controversial twist during the Gulf War era, Slaughter turned heel as an Iraqi sympathizer, drawing massive heat but proving his ability to evolve and push boundaries. He eventually returned to his patriotic roots, and by the early 90s was beloved once again. Inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2004, Sergeant Slaughter remains a lasting icon. Ric Flair. If you were a wrestling fan in the late 70s and throughout the 80s, Ric Flair wasn't just a name you lived the woo. With his flowing blonde hair, sequined robes, and unmatched bravado. The Nature Boy embodied wrestling's glitz and glam like no one else. Born in 1949, Ric Flair became the face of the National Wrestling Alliance (NWA), holding the world title 16 times and engaging in legendary rivalries with Dusty Rhodes, Ricky Steamboat, and later even Hulk Hogan. He wasn't just entertaining, he was a master storyteller in the ring. Ric Flair wasn't about brute force, he was about style, psychology, and presence. Every entrance felt like a main event. Though he officially retired multiple times, Flair remained part of the wrestling world for decades, proof of his unmatched legacy. For those of us who grew up during the golden era, Ric Flair wasn't just a wrestler. He was the limousine-riding, jet-flying, kiss-stealing, wheeling and dealing icon of our Saturday nights. Bruno Sammartino. Long before wrestling was national or global, Bruno Sammartino was its king. Known as the living legend, he held the WWF, now WWE Championship, for an astounding 11 combined years, still the longest reign in history. Born in Italy in 1935 and a survivor of Nazi-occupied Europe, Bruno immigrated to America and built himself into a powerhouse. In the 1960s and 70s, he sold out Madison Square Garden a record number of times, becoming a hero to working-class fans, especially immigrants who saw themselves in his journey. His rivalries with the likes of superstar Billy Graham and Larry Zbyszko are still remembered for their drama and realism. He passed away in 2018 at the age of 82. To those who watched him live, Bruno wasn't just a wrestler. He was a symbol of resilience, loyalty, and true greatness in the ring. Jake, the Snake Roberts. In an era of loud voices and larger-than-life characters, Jake the Snake Roberts stood out by doing the opposite. He spoke softly and carried a snake. With his slow, deliberate promos and piercing gaze, Jake didn't need to yell to terrify his opponents or captivate the audience. He brought psychology into wrestling like few ever had. Every word felt personal, every movement calculated, and then, of course, there was Damien, the python he carried in a canvas sack, ready to be draped over a fallen rival after the dreaded DDT. His devastating finishing move, unforgettable presence, made him one of the most iconic figures of the 80s. Though his real-life struggles with addiction were well documented, Jake's journey of recovery has been equally powerful. Today, he's remembered not just for the snake, but for the shadows he brought into wrestling and the strength it took to emerge from them. Tito Santana. In the flashy world of 1980s wrestling, Tito Santana stood out for his class, consistency, and pure athleticism. A former teacher turned wrestler, Santana was one of the most respected babyfaces, good guys of his era, known for his resilience and fighting spirit. Tito was a two-time Intercontinental Champion and a tag team champion, and he was often the dependable performer who could light up a crowd no matter where he was on the card. As one of the first Latino stars to make it big in the WWF, Tito was a trailblazer. His signature battle cry, Arriba, and flying forearm smash became staples of Saturday morning wrestling for a generation of fans. He was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2004. To this day, Tito Santana is remembered as a workhorse, a role model, and a quiet legend of the golden era. They were more than just wrestlers. They were a part of our lives, our Saturdays, our childhood memories. If this trip down memory lane brought back even one unforgettable moment, don't let it end here. Let us know in the comments who was your ultimate wrestling legend, and if this video brought back even a spark of nostalgia, give it a like, share it with an old friend, And don't forget to subscribe for more walks down memory lane.